to speak to you. So just a couple more seconds. Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. Good afternoon for those of you who are in the United States. My name's Micaela Cohen-Fuentes. I'm a bookseller here at Politics and Prose, and I'd like to welcome you all to PNP Live in a partnership with the Norwegian Embassy, who has been really amazing coordinating with us to bring us this amazing event. So thank you to the Norwegian Embassy. And we'd like to thank you for joining us in a virtual format in the midst of truly extraordinary times. We strive to bring you the authors you love and the books you crave. At any point during the event, you can click on the link in the chat to purchase Jenny Hval's book, Girls Against God, on the Politics and Prose website. If you have any questions for Jenny, Rebecca, or Jeff, who will be in conversation with her, please use the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but because there are so many of you listening and limited amount of time, we do regret that we won't be able to get to all of them. Before we begin, we want to sincerely thank you again for being with us today. We're so grateful to our family of loyal customers who keep our business and our spirits afloat. This is a really challenging time for small businesses, including independent bookstores, so your support means everything to us. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. Norwegian writer and musician Jenny Hval has honed an intellectual and uncompromising view of politics and sexuality in her prose as well as in records that include Blood Bitch, Apocalypse, Girl, and Innocence Is Kinky. Her debut novel, Paradise Rot, was published to Acclaim in 2018. Hval's newest book, Girls Against God, is set in 1990s Norway. White picket fences run in neat rows, and Christian conservatism runs deep. But as the artist considers her work, things start stirring themselves up. In a corner of Oslo, a coven of witches begins cooking up some curses. Out deep in the forest, a group of schoolgirls gets very lost and things get very strange. We are thrilled to have Jenny Hval in conversation with Becca Dinerstein and Jeff VanderMeer. Rebecca is the author of novels Hex and The Sunlit Night, and a bilingual English-Norwegian collection of poems, Lofoten, sorry if I butchered that. Knight has reviewed restaurants for The Village, Voice, and novels for the New York Times Book Review, and her essays have appeared online in The New Yorker, The Paris Review, just to name a few. Jeff VanderMeer is the New York Times bestselling, critically acclaimed author of the Southern Reach trilogy, winner of the Shirley Jackson Award, among others, and he is called the Weird Thoreau by The New Yorker. Thank you again for joining us on PNP Live, and without further ado, I will turn it over to our amazing authors.
Thank you so much for that. And I just want to say Politics and Prose is one of my favorite bookstores, and I always love doing events for them, and especially in such distinguished company. I think that Rebecca and I are going to start out by just talking a little bit about Jenny Hval's work, and then Rebecca has some questions. I have some questions. We'll have a conversation, and then as was said, we'll open it up to audience questions with Rebecca and I picking alternately what is put in front of Hval to answer. I was first aware of Hval's work through Paradise Rot. I am ashamed to say I knew nothing about the music, and came to the music in a secondary way. What I appreciated about Paradise Rot was this surreal, dreamlike, otherworldly reality that was in part because of the interiority, the amazing interiority that she brought to the character. And I love being brought to unexpected places within that. It wasn't this floaty thing that just kind of drifted away. It was something that was also very sharp and precise. And I would just say that I prefer novelists who immerse me in their point of view, and they change me through their prose, and they don't lead me by the hand. They expect me to just be immersed in it. And then Girls Against God, is a very different novel in some ways, but it also has this quality of making you meet it on its own terms. And what I loved about the new novel is that it finds these clever and interesting ways to be didactic, which I mean in a positive way, that actually just support the character voice. And there's this amazing fusion of the real and the unreal in a kind of matter-of-fact tone that's quite fascinating, because it's very different from Paradise Rot. And I really appreciated the versatility and the range between the two novels. One thing that they both share, I think, and this is just maybe my own little pet thing that I've been thinking about lately, is I've been thinking about structures in fiction and other forms of art that push back against the traditional, because more and more I'm suspicious of traditional structures and traditional commercial ways of storytelling and art, because I feel like they tend to prop up bad systems. They kind of embody those systems. And so I really appreciate also that in Hval's work, I feel like they don't just push it back against the status quo, they show a different path forward in the way that they tell the stories. And that's really important to me as a person, but also as a fellow novelist in terms of where I get my inspiration from. And then finally, I'd just like to say that I was very appreciative to then seek out the music and really, really like it and love it, and then listen to Apocalypse Girl while writing one of my last novels, Dead Astronauts, because I do listen to music a lot when I'm writing. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And it's so fun to be here with you both. Jenny, thank you for allowing us to welcome this translation, which is just so exciting. I used to live in Norway for a couple of years, and you were always this sort of beacon of how to transcend the difference between the cultures. I was sort of desperately trying to learn Norwegian and very aware of the discrepancies between New York City life and Oslo life and the two languages. And you were always an example of how to do something entirely beyond the two that somehow included both. And it was really thrilling to me to follow your work for the past couple of years. So I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation. And I basically want to ask you a couple of quick introductory questions about how this book came to be published in English, and about the sort of translation gap that I've worked with in translating, and I've always found it a little bit tricky between English and Norwegian. Norwegian has some really spectacular literalisms. I love that kjøleskapet, if the word for refrigerator literally in English is chili closet, and then like the word for straw, like a straw that you drink a drink, is sugerør, which is literally sucking pipe, and everything is just sort of exactly what it is. Whereas in English, English is made up of so many different languages. It's so tangled on itself. There's so many words for each word. And so I've often found that bridging between English and Norwegian, you're moving from a place of real clarity to a place of real confusion. And I wanted to ask about that. So just beginning with the title of this book, in Norwegian, it's "Å hate Gud," which is very simply "to hate God." In English, it's become girl, we've introduced girls against God. And I know that the phrase "girls hating through centuries, the end" becomes this sort of mantra throughout the book. How did it transform? Is the American title somehow a mix between that mantra and the original Norwegian title? And how do you feel about introducing the word girls, which carries a certain commercial specificity in American culture, especially after the show and everything? The use of the word girls in English feels very different to me than the subversive seriousness with which it's used in Norwegian. But at the same time, I can't really imagine the book being called Jenter mot Gud in Norwegian. So I'm curious how you feel about the two titles and whether they work to the same effect.
I don't think they do work to the same effect. And I think the reason why that sort of works for me is because I've worked in two languages with my music, with lyrics in English and writing prose in Norwegian. So I'm very happy with having completely different titles, completely different ways of creating, also like a sound element or a poetic element with a title. And I think that for the Norwegian version, almost, or the original, O Hategud, to me, it sounded okay, and it sounded matter of fact, and it also was a title that came in way before the book was finished. Girls Against God is, which I just suggested because it had been like a working title for a while, or like a jokey sort of English title for the project, sort of, I think, came in as a title later on. So that was after I'd written like girls hating throughout the centuries, and that had sort of built up. So it almost feels like the translation could then be a performance of what I'd written, which meant that it needed a new title. I did the same thing with Paradise Rot, because the title of that book was Perlebryggeriet, which means the Pearl Brewery in Norwegian. But I wasn't very happy with that title, especially since it was like 10 years had passed, or 9 years in between the Norwegian publication and the English one. So I think it's really great to play with the fact that time passes, even if it is a book. It's like everything is temporal in a way. Everything keeps moving. And also, this is when I should say that Girls Against God is also a magazine or fanzine made a few years back. So I told the publisher, and I hope they asked politely if we could use this title, but I'm not sure if it was lost. So I kind of stole the title also from a publication.
Cool. And given your absolutely perfect English, did you oversee any element of the translation, or were you involved in it at all? Are you pleased with it? Does it feel like it rings true to you?
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I didn't actually look at it very much, partly because I was touring, because I'm not always able to be at full brain capacity when I tour, but also because there were only a few things that I found that I needed to discuss when I did read it, and that was related to pretty much nothing but like a few Norwegian concepts. So I remember we had quite a discussion around what these young people driving around in cars aimlessly should be called in English, because in Norwegian we have a word for them. It's called råner, which is male pig, and it's like a kind of a cultural thing, almost subcultural thing, or so yeah. So that there were a couple of like Norwegianisms that needed to be discussed, that had to do with what kind of character a certain type of person is. But apart from that, I was just kind of reading through and was quite happy with and excited that it worked at all in English, because it's quite, to me, writing it felt like this could only be in Norwegian, because it's so specific, and it's also sort of regional. So it's quite, I find it really amazing that I am talking to you right now about an English version of it. It's a treat.
It works spectacularly well. And I mean, there are a couple of places where the fact of the translation is explicitly called out, which seems to add text to the book that I can't imagine appears in the originals. The example being the same sounds ring in marrow as in margin. In my language, it's even the same word. Surely there's that little aside doesn't exist in the original, but it allows us to understand in English the point that's being made rather elegantly and throughout. I mean, it was such a treat for me to read, because with my limited exposure to Norway and to Norwegian, I was able to enjoy what I recognized while also seeing it clearly articulated in English. And I think it does a really beautiful job of that. So I don't know, congratulations to you and the translator. And then
yeah, I think that actually by putting in those things, I think that there is like this lovely sort of character that is at the same time the protagonist, but also more of myself, I think, because it's actually like the writer explaining,
Right.
but also then the translator. So it's like a really wonderful sort of triple layer of voice that the original couldn't have. And I actually think that that is a pretty good witch coven of its own in language.
Absolutely. I made the horrific mistake in our pre-event discussion of conflating speaker and author by asking Jenny where she studied in New England, because the speaker of this novel mentioned studying creative writing in New England, and something that I hate more than anything is when people ask me, how much of the Sunlit Night is you? And it's, no, it's not. So I'm so embarrassed to have done the same thing, but there is this very dynamic interplay of the speaker, the artist, the translator, the writer. And I think it's the richness of the text that sort of calls forward that confusion, as irritating as it is. I love it when the 3 letters that Norwegian has that English is missing are called out again and again. They've been anchors to me, and o. And I wanted to read, if I may, just a bit of how those letters are described. So O, which is the letter at the end of the Norwegian alphabet, that's an A with a circle on top, is described in the book as the last letter of the alphabet that no one in the cafe can read, the invisible letter outside the reach of the keyboard, the letter that fell off the edge of civilization, the muffled sound, the genetic speech impediment. I love that so much because it was the letter that absolutely captivated me when I was learning the language. It always struck me as sort of this singularly lonely mountain under the moon. And then to see this expansion of sort of how it can be misunderstood and lost. And I was wondering, I mean, Norwegian has these 3 treasures of letters that English is just missing. Is there anything in the English language that you wish Norwegian had, or that has been valuable to you as a resource in composing your lyrics and in working in English that you then find missing when you turn back to Norwegian?
Yeah, I think many things. I mean, English has it's a language that has a lot of like I think you have a much bigger vocabulary than we do. Maybe because there are always words coming in from different languages. There's always a French word and then a word that came from somewhere else that mean the same thing or roughly the same thing. I really enjoyed before how you pulled up these examples of how matter of fact Norwegian is, because I I have struggled a lot with finding a voice when writing in Norwegian, because for me English is a language that has felt much more liberal and allowed me to play around a lot more with sentences, meanings of words, sort of stretch. And I find that Norwegian to me seems many times inflexible, and a lot of the highly praised, or like the what is considered like the very best of Norwegian literature is many times this kind of concise, almost wordless poetry or theater plays, or yeah, like stuff that is very concise and small, or like or just precise. And I guess I'm not that's not how I write, and I can't write very well that way. So I think that to me, English is like learning English um, has helped me find ways to stretch Norwegian into something where I can sort of grasp it and feel like, oh, I can use this language for something, and it's not just thrown back at me as these sort of concise, concrete sentences that I heard as a child.
That's so beautiful to hear, because I always felt that Norwegian helped me crystallize my English. So to move in the other direction of getting bigger because of the bigness of English is fun. Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you, but Jenny, thank you for humoring those.
Yeah, so I have, first of all, one thing I did notice is that in the original publication, there's 9 years between Paradise Rot and Girls Against God, even though they've been published fairly quickly together in English. And I personally, and maybe other people would think differently, feel like the style of Paradise is very much more dreamlike and has a different texture to it than Girls, which does feel more direct. And I'm wondering how you feel about that idea and how you think of the idea of style when it comes to your writing, and would we expect a third novel to be in a totally different style? You know, and keeping in mind that I can't read the original, so I don't know if they feel that way in the original or not.
Well, there is a third book because I did write one that came out in 2012, but it wasn't a novel. It was more like well, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was very connected to an album called Innocence Is Kinky, and this one I think probably it might not be translated at all. It's more fragmented. So there is something in between, but I'm not sure if it's very representative of like the in between of those two books. I think that the translation process of Paradise Rut was an amazing experience to be part of for me, because those 9 years changed the sort of ideas of what that book was, and the translation changed it even further. So I think that some of the dreamlike quality actually came in and did not exist in the same way in the original. And also, I did start writing Paradise Rot in English, so I felt like it was like coming home, and that the book wasn't even finished until it was translated into English. Although it was translated to something that was much closer to the Norwegian finished version of that book than my original English, which was much more floaty and abstract because it was an early draft of the work. But yeah, I feel like a lot of things happened in between, and I'm currently trying to write and failing. I don't know if this is something that you guys can
Sure, especially this year.
recognize, but yeah, I actually don't really know where to go from here and write more. I guess I'm like now inspired by both the process with the old translation and the new one, and I don't know where I am. So and obviously this is also like I find it to be a strange time to be writing.
Yeah.
So I always want to find new ways to write something that's in between, like right here and right now, and a completely different place, much more science fiction oriented, but then still stuck in this very concrete reality at the same time. But I don't know really how I would do it now.
Yeah.
So looking.
Yeah. And I'm curious about your writing process for something like Girls Against God, because I feel like the kind of writing that you do there is extremely difficult because it shifts a lot. In places it does one of my favorite things where it seems to go off on tangents, but they're not really tangents. And so I'm curious, like, how do you build a book like that? Is there a lot of material that you sift through to get to that point? Is it a very tight writing process where you don't go through that? How much revision? Those kinds of things are curious to me.
I think that it felt like I was writing backwards, which made it then easier to structure, because I started without a protagonist. I started at the tail end of a recording process in which my producer and I had been looking into a lot of sort of lo-fi horror films, and some of them had a clear protagonist, but it wasn't ever a sort of psychologically sort of real character. It was more like, oh, this person's here and something's happening. So actually my producer gave me sort of an idea for a film, and he wanted to make this film eventually, but that never happened, and I sort of interests changed. But I started then writing about this group of girls in the forest, and I was very much wanting them to be like a collective person, or just to have no protagonist. And so out of that sort of wild trip into the forest, which originally was more going to be like picnic at Hanging Rock ish.
That could be the title too. I mean, it's like
I once wrote a song called Panicking at Hanging Rock many years ago. That's a different story. But yeah, so out of this film script about the girls in the forest came a lot of on stage band scenes, which then became the scenes in the book, which are like magical rituals, artist rituals, consisting of a witch coven or like several people, lots of artists doing collaborative things. And then after that, I think I got drawn into a lot of YouTube videos that were interviews with black metal bands from the 90s, and out of that again came like a character that had an angry voice. So it was kind of I felt like that was like writing backwards, sort of doing like very visual movie scenes first, and then finding this like not hateful but blasphemous voice, like my sort of like almost somebody like writing their blasphemous autobiography, although I never studied in New England. I mean, it's quite some of the biographical stuff is from me, other stuff is not, but that was actually a joke. I mean, I was very much like sort of because I studied in Australia, and I thought, well, I'll take this person to New England because that's where I wanted to go, but I couldn't afford it when I was 19. So yeah.
Australia sounds like much more fun, but
right.
I mean, I don't know, I can't compare, but it was great.
So along with that, and with the riff on hate that kind of begins the novel, you know, I've read a fair number of reviews that talk about the darkness of your fiction that
Really?
I'm not sure I would always agree with. So I'm curious about the role of humor in your work, because I feel like there are parts of Girls Against God that are both serious and funny at the same time, even if maybe darkly funny or cuttingly funny. And there are parts of the hate rant that I appreciated for both things. Am I wrong about that? Am I just projecting that onto the text, or?
I mean, I don't think necessarily that it's like any interpretation is 100% wrong.
So I'm
For
wrong.
me, totally. For me, it was 100% thrilling to write because it was so funny to me. It's definitely more humorous than dark, I would say. Also, it's more. I mean, I don't even see it like after having written this book, I felt like the character sort of, it was more about reconciling with ideas and sort of reclaiming ideas of the spiritual than actually hating and opposing, and finding that in opposition there is also acceptance and responsibility. So I was thinking a lot about how to, that like the ultimate thing, because I don't think that this is a book that can ever be finished. It's like it's like just at least my ideas can't be finished and done with. I was always imagining like a magical art ritual where everyone could take full responsibility for their actions and be completely inclusive. So yeah, but so yeah, so to me it's the blasphemous quality is humorous and more about reconciliation and experimenting, I think, than actual hate, as we've known.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things I like about the book is that it doesn't, to use a cliche, pull any punches. So I think sometimes reviewers can get confused because they don't know how they're supposed to react to something, because their own norms or their own approach to something is kind of getting in the way. And so I'm kind of curious, like for my novel Annihilation, I actually consider large parts of it to be pretty normal nature writing. But I find that people who don't go out in nature much find it much, much stranger than those who do. So in a sense, this goes back to maybe the translation question. Do you find, or have you found, and I know this book has only been out for a short time, but a difference in the reaction in translation from an audience or readership than in the original publication? And if so, what is that difference?
Well, I mean, I actually haven't read a lot of the response yet. And also, I'm not sure if I actually did get that much feedback on the Norwegian original. I didn't get many reviews. I might be a little too sort of on the outside of the literary establishment, and Norway is such a small country, and there's just, you know, like with the current situation of criticism just kind of dissipating and disappearing completely. There wasn't much room for stuff like me. So I felt like, or I feel like now, that I can't really answer that question properly. I do feel like the humorous aspect was also kind of missing in the reception in Norway. But yeah, I'm still kind of chewing on why. I mean, I find this to be the reception of my music work as well, that the humor and some of the like some things are just overlooked. And I'm sure every writer feels this way.
Yeah.
But also maybe I feel it more.
That's really quite interesting, actually. And I'm also curious, you mentioned the music. You know, I know forms are interrelated and everything, but how do you view your fiction in the context or not in the context of your music? Are there just things that you get from the fiction that you don't, or things you want to express that you can't in the music, or how does that work? How is one idea music and one idea not music? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I find it really interesting to work with form in when I don't do music. For me, I'm very drawn to creating songs when I write music, and so I end up writing songs most of the time that are quite structured, and that sort of, I feel like they structure themselves by what I want when I improvise, because I many times improvise form. But that's over such a short time span, so like it's very luxurious to get to sort of work on larger formats, which I feel like, you know, writing is so much slower than music. It takes so much more time, at least for the reader, most of the time, to read a book, like, say, in comparison to listen to an album, which takes an hour if you can do it. So I find that I can learn more actually from about how I also work with music by writing prose. And sometimes I feel like when I'm writing prose, that's just like, it's very almost abject to me. It's very unstructured on the page compared to these like forms, melodies, like everything is furnished in different ways. So I feel like music is more structured, and then for a long time everything is chaos. Everything is like vomit on the page when I write just words, as I call it, which is prose. So it's interesting to see like that slow development into something from just like being in the dark. So music maybe is representing like some kind of light, or I wouldn't say divine light, more like an IKEA lamp that in your room that lights up what you're doing. Yeah, that didn't make so much sense, but I just find it very interesting to have one way of working where I sort of can always see the path, even though it's not always that interesting. Like I'm not always very happy with the music I make, but I always see where it's going. And with literature, I'm like stuck. I'm swimming in something and I really don't know what it is.
At the same time, though, I can't think of another human being who would use the words abject and furnished in a second language to describe feeling stuck in that medium of, I mean, your verbal mastery across language is so extreme. To what extent is pursuing writing sort of an outlet for this talent you have? I mean, it's an extraordinary talent.
Well, I don't always. I thank you for that. I do feel handicapped when I speak in English
Really?
and when I write in English also. But when I write, there's some kind of tightening of character maybe because of all the things I can't reach for. I have to replace it with something I really don't know. So it's like um, when I can't find the words, I have to just go into surreal places, places I didn't think that I would. I sort of have to leap into. I mean, I'm writing at the moment, and I'm finding myself with this kind of not ability, but I enjoy taking leaps with English when I'm sort of I can't find that word, and then all of a sudden I'll just like go into completely different subject instead and just try to make little blocks that make sense and then combine them in strange ways. So yeah, maybe that's why I say I furnish, um, because there are so many things that I can't look for even. I mean, the English language, I was talking about the vocabulary that you guys have available to you. It's just, yeah, there's just so much there and I don't know it, so I have to create strange worlds
I
instead.
I wish that more native English speakers would create strange worlds and make leaps when confronted with writer's block, which I don't think is, I mean, unique to um, non-native speaker. I mean, it's a really masterful and resourceful approach to a problem that transcends language. So that's all. I think you're
Yeah,
really
but I'm not very good at that in Norwegian. In Norwegian, I become the Protestant version of myself where I keep diligently sort of looking for the
right.
more precise formulation. Um, so yeah, I think that this is how I sort of maybe hopefully can by writing more sort of learn more about how I can work in my own language as well.
And with regard to those strange worlds, and I don't need much for it to seem like a speculative element, but both Rot and more explicitly, I guess, Girls Against God have this speculative or non-real real element. And I'm curious, what informs that part of your work? Is it, strange science and weird in nonfiction? Is it science fiction novels? Is it film? What do you like in those spaces that informs your work?
Mm, I think
Because I know it's a broad question, but
yeah, but that's okay because I mean it's the broad questions can take you into more different places. So I find that at least for Girls Against God, it was very much able to go places because of films. I remember I was thinking a lot about this BBC film from the 70s called Penda's Fen when I was writing, which on the one hand is a quite a is like a coming of age Catholic school type of boys' school kind of narrative, but it also had these incredible dream scenarios in it, and also this idea that the pagan past and sort of Christian contemporary society sort of exist on top of each other, and sort of can almost be woven together completely. So anyway, I was thinking a lot about that film and many other films. Yeah, I am quite interested in film. So I find that it's easier for me sometimes to take to take inspiration from movies, because sometimes feel like I need to almost not that I don't read. I read a lot, but film is a sort of an easier place for me to sort of be inspired to write, maybe because I feel like a little bit like an outsider in the literary establishment, or to the literary establishment. So I feel like, oh, I'm free.
Yeah, I get a lot of I translate a lot of technique from film into fiction. I find it incredibly invigorating to do that with different forms. So I think we're going to have to go to reader questions in a second. But Rebecca, do you have any last questions for Jenny?
Oh, well, Jenny sort of mentioned it, but I wanted to ask what you're feeling attracted to right now, and in terms of forces that are pulling you toward new work, or even just the beginnings of the inklings of new work. But it's a wretched question, and the answer, especially right now, is basically maybe nothing. So that's all right.
Yeah. It's not nothing. I mean, I do feel like I end up in a lot of discussions with people about how it's not so easy to be sort of on fire with inspiration at this time, and there's something lacking of energy. Like there's some universal lack of energy, I feel. I mean, everyone's still trying to work the best way they can, and I think I'm attracted to at the moment. This changes a lot, but I'm attracted to writing almost like short stories, which surprised me. Just very matter of fact things, and I'm not sure how that's going, but yeah, just trying to write very very narrative things, and then insert stuff about, I guess, what I miss, which is being on stage, stuff I can't do, and make that part really otherworldly and really meaningful by almost being on a different planet. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm not sure if it's working. Q&A.
So the first question from the audience is from Skylar Cruz, and the question is basically, even though the novel writing process and the music process are different, do they influence each other? And my follow-up question would be, have you ever gotten any music out of the fiction writing?
Yeah, I think I have. What happens sometimes is that I will write, work on a project, and then find that, or I'll work on a project that is text only, or prose, Norwegian, and I'll find that a year later I can write one song lyric that sums up 100 pages of what I tried to do, which is a nice feeling, but also a feeling of what was I doing. The other way around, I think that is, I mean, talking about Girls Against God, I did put in a lot of my on stage experience, maybe more than my sort of writing music experience, because I wanted all these sort of collaborative scenes, and the idea of the band and the bond and the blasphemous togetherness. And so I drew upon that a lot. I mean, when I get to be on stage, I feel like I experience so many interesting out of this world relationships and quick moments of experiences. I get to sense things that I wouldn't have been able to see or hear or feel off stage. And yeah, so that has inspired me a lot when writing. But I find that except for in the scenes of this book where I was able to put it into sort of a magical ritual context, it's hard to bring that sort of experience into writing without it just being blabbering on about something that is a sensation. So that was really fun. So I do feel like, yeah, they influence each other.
I'll grab another one from the Q&A from Jay French. It's a longer question about your musical interests and influences, many vocalists, it says, whose delivery, even when there are clear lyrics, transcend narrative, citing Elizabeth Fraser and Annette Peacock. How does Jenny feel about prose as music in itself, that her novels can be read as narrative, but also as a sonic experience? So we were talking about that a little bit, I guess, with the title, with Girls Against God having its own sonic integrity. Is that something that, what?
Gag.
Gag. Yeah, do you feel as interested in rhythm while composing prose as composing music, is perhaps another paraphrase of the question?
I feel like I mean I've grown up listening to a lot of music that has no lyrics, or I didn't understand the lyrics for even, which made it which meant that when I started listening to the Cocteau Twins and Liz Fraser, who was referenced in this question, I had no problem with there being no words or words from a dictionary, because that's how I grew up with music being. And that is probably quite influential for me, but at the same time, I've never felt like I've been able to do the same. So I am also very curious about the potential, like the sonic potential, the rhythmic potential in each word.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can completely change or like make or break music that I'm working on. And I'm always sort of trying to create music with prose as well. And I think that in some passages of this book, I was specifically trying to sort of get the reader to feel like they were reading on, things were happening, but something was like bubbling up that you couldn't explain through the meanings of words.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if those things are possible. I mean, it sounds a bit stupid to talk about, but that doesn't mean that it's not there as a motivation and not there as an experience. I mean, there are so many experiences that have to do with music and sensation that we just don't have the words for. But if words make you feel and they accumulate to something, then we do have the words for them. We just can't interpret their exact meaning and accumulate that into this this state.
So I have another audience question, but I have a question of my own too. I'm just really curious. Do you listen to music when you write your novels?
Well, I noticed that you were listening to my music, you said
Yes.
at some point, which I found I mean, I could never listen to that album while writing. Um, I think I once wrote I wrote my master's thesis on Kate Bush while listening only to Paul Simon. So at that point, I definitely could.
Wait, why Paul Simon?
Yeah,
Oh,
why
I
Paul
love
Simon?
Paul Simon.
Is Paul
I mean,
Simon the okay? I thought maybe it's
listen,
the
I was
opposite of Kate
Paul
Bush.
Simon.
I mean, I mean, yeah, he's probably, I'm not sure if it's very nice, but yeah, his sense of rhythm is beyond. So, but so is Kate Bush, obviously. Um, So that was an old and stupid example. I can usually only listen to drones or things that hardly change at all. For some reason, I can still listen to a lot of Robert Ashley, even the stuff with, the opera stuff. Um, and yeah, I can't really listen to songs very much, but there are moments I can get drawn into listening and writing at the same time. I find it quite magical, but sometimes I need to really work up to something. Um, I find it very interesting when I have writing sessions where I can listen to other things and just drones.
Yeah, I tend to not listen to stuff with lyrics unless I've listened to it a lot already. And in part, that's because I found that I was actually beginning to incorporate the lyrics of new songs into the fiction, which is not a good thing. So,
Yeah,
not really how I wanted to go down as a plagiarist. But so the question from the audience, from an anonymous reader is, do you plan to explore in prose any of the themes in Practice of Love, your latest LP? And those themes, the reader says, are childbirth and marriage.
yes, but I'm failing so far.
Yeah, that's what you're working on
That's a
now?
good question because I can answer with a yes or no. I am I've been very interested in exploring marriage, and tried. So keep a watch out. My marriage story is coming. I was joking about this with a friend a couple of days ago because I'd written something and I jokingly said, "This is my marriage story," referring to the film that I haven't seen. But no, it wasn't. But yeah, I'm very interested in anything that has a contract, a contractual relationship. So that is probably not so much what I'm writing about in the Practice of Love. But yeah, we'll see.
Having a newborn at home, I can't wait for your take on childbirth. Very, very excited for that.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet, but that was only referring to the marriage. But yeah, we'd have to. Yeah, I have many questions for you, but that will have to come in a later stage after this.
Oh, right, it's my turn. Another question from Brennan McCracken. The gap between the real and another world or science fiction, what would you say is your relationship to speculation? Do you see yourself as writing towards an alternative future?
Oh, I would love that. I think that I would really. I mean, I always think that that's what I want to do, or even an alternative present. Maybe both at once. I think I've become really interested in this now that we're in an alternative present at the moment, especially, I mean, maybe everyone or everyone who can't work as normal, live as normal. And I am very interested in what can we do with that, say with a stage experience. What can I do in the future to sort of maybe when I can be on stage again, or if I can't for a while still, maybe I can try to create a different scenario for expressing stage ideas, because it's nice to have this period of not being able to tour and perform music and to have a think about what did it ever work in the first place, what we were doing. Does any art discipline that's been quite commercialized ever really work? I've been previously I've had like times when I've been reading a lot about labor, not childbirth, unfortunately, but what is it to work? What is it for an artist to work and produce, and how much has that got to do with the artistic side, and how much of it has to do with capitalist structures of being productive? So yeah, that's quite that's very interesting for me to sort of sketch out possible and impossible futures, and maybe try to combine this very practical, political, these ideas with something that could never happen in the actual present or future, something very much more associative and leading elsewhere.
I have a, oh, sorry, Jeff, I could.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
I have a quick follow-up question of my own for that. I mean, it was incredibly moving to me to hear that you felt sort of underwhelmed perhaps by the Norwegian response to your original edition, just because I was always so intimidated by Norwegian critical culture. And you, I see as sort of a superhero, immune to any kind of disappointment in that realm. And so the fact that you also felt disappointed was sort of shocking to me. How do you navigate the relationship between your creative work and the increasingly digital compulsion to market and promote and promote it and engage with an online response that can be anonymous and various and underwhelming in a million ways? Do you have any advice for the balance between creating and receiving a response?
Well, I think that I'm not sure if I've handled response very well in my time. I think one of the reasons why there's only been a few books from me, and it took a long time between the two sort of novel fiction works, is because I felt like I got very underwhelming response, and I was quite sensitive and kind of a little turned off from writing after the Norwegian publication of Paradise Rot. And I actually think that when Verso contacted me for about translating Paradise Rot was when I really got going with Girls Against God, because I felt like self-confidence.
Cool.
We're back.
Cool.
So I'm not sure if I have good advice for that reason, that I've actually kind of struggled with being quite sensitive. I think it's good to be sensitive also. But yeah, I'm also I'm good at being bad at social media, because I really can't take all the feedback I can't handle it very well, and I know it. So it's not that I can't emotionally take criticism. It's more that I don't handle sort of anonymous feedback. I don't know where to put it inside. So I sort of try to stay away as much as possible, although I really like also communicating with people. And I occasionally feel like I very much want to share stuff, but I generally don't do it very much because I feel like the portals make it impossible to have personal connections. I used to be a lot more online when I was younger, and I had like my blog and web pages and this kind of thing, and I would write anything there. But I don't feel I can do that on social media. The persuasive technologies. I'm not very good at persuading, I feel.
Yeah. And being asked to persuade is uniquely humiliating in its own regard.
Yes. Some people are good at it though. I mean, I do see that younger generations don't really have a problem with just telling people about what they're doing, and for me it's like, I'm not sure. So yeah, that's what I look like.
Completely 100%.
That wasn't good advice, but I think that you don't need you. I guess you can't. You can only take advice from younger people.
I think it's perfect advice that it's fair to be sensitive. I mean, I really appreciate that. I'm sensitive and I beat myself up about it. And if you're allowed, if Jenny Hval says you can be sensitive, I take that to heart.
Oh, good.
Well, I think that's the end of the Q&A portion. I've really enjoyed listening to the answers, frankly, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off Rebecca said. I think, Jenny, you're such a strong force for feminism and younger women. I, myself included, just really look to you for guidance. And I think you're just such an amazing writer. So thank you so much for this. And thank you, Jeff and Rebecca. So with that, I just want to turn back to the audience. Again, many thanks to Jenny Hval, Rebecca Dinerstein, and Jeff VanderMeer. And to you, our audience. Your patronage is what enables us to bring you these amazing programs. And I cannot emphasize this enough, we cannot continue to host these types of events without the book sales to support them. So if you can please support Jenny or Rebecca or Jeff by purchasing their books on the PNP website, the link is up on the Zoom, and you can also check our website. For more PNP live events, you can, again, look at our website. It's going to be a really exciting fall. We have another partnered event with the Norwegian Embassy coming up with Joe Nesbo and Michael Connolly in convo with Oline Cogdill on November 15th at 1 p.m. I just want to thank the authors again and for all of you for joining us today. And from all of us at Politics and Prose, stay safe, stay well read, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.